You've been in country for 47 days. Nobody knows you're here. Not the base commander, not the infantry battalion operating 12 clicks south, not even most of your own command structure. You're Marine Force Recon. But you're not with your team. You're alone. Deep reconnaissance doesn't always mean a four-man team sneaking through the jungle. Sometimes it means one operator, no backup, no extraction plan, living in a hide site the size of a coffin for weeks at a time. Welcome to the life of a singleton. Your hide site is a shallow depression you dug into a hillside overlooking a valley. You've been here for 9 days without moving more than 3 feet. The roof is camouflage netting woven with local vegetation that you replace every morning before dawn. You urinate into bottles. You defecate into bags. You don't cook. You don't use light. You barely breathe when patrols pass within 20 meters of your position. And they do pass. Yesterday, 6 men walked so close you could smell their cigarettes. The mission is simple in concept. Observe, report, don't get caught. The valley below is a transit route for high-value targets, moving weapons, and personnel across the border. Your job is to identify them, track their patterns, and relay coordinates to people who will make decisions you'll never hear about. You've got a satellite radio the size of a paperback book. You use it once every 72 hours. 30 seconds of transmission, then silence. Any longer, and someone might triangulate your position. Through your spotting scope, you watch a white Toyota truck park near a compound. 4 men exit. One of them matches a photograph you memorized 3 months ago during mission prep. Mid-level commander, responsible for coordinating logistics across 3 provinces. He's been on a list for 2 years. You note the time, the vehicle, the faces of the other 3 men. You sketch the compound layout in your waterproof notebook. Guard positions, entry points, the location of a generator. You'll transmit this information tomorrow during your next window. But something feels wrong. A vehicle you haven't seen before. A black SUV with tinted windows that doesn't fit the pattern. It arrives after sunset. 6 men in clean clothes, not fighters, too well fed, too comfortable. They move like people who aren't used to being shot at. You adjust your scope. One of them is carrying a briefcase, not a gun, not supplies. A briefcase. That detail goes in your notes with a question mark. The nights are worse than the days. During the day, you have the mission. You have observations to make, details to record, patterns to analyze. At night, there's nothing except the cramping in your legs and the fear that you've been compromised. Every sound becomes a threat. A branch snapping, an animal moving through brush. The distant echo of voices carried on the wind. You don't sleep. You enter a state that's something between meditation and barely controlled paranoia. Your hand stays on your rifle. Your eyes stay open. You've been trained for this. Months of preparation, learning to control your heart rate, learning to stay motionless for hours, learning to survive on 800 calories a day, learning to be invisible. But training doesn't prepare you for the psychological weight, the isolation, the knowledge that if something goes wrong, if you're discovered, if you break a leg or get bit by something venomous, nobody's coming. You're too far out, too deep. The risk of sending a rescue force outweighs the value of one operator. You knew that when you accepted the mission. On day 11, the black SUV returns. This time 7 men exit. One of them is different, older, gray beard, moves with authority. The others defer to him. You've never seen his face in any briefing materials, but you recognize power when you see it. He stays for 40 minutes. When he leaves, you make a decision that will define everything that comes next. You're going to follow him. You break protocol. You're supposed to observe and report, not pursue. But this man radiates importance, the kind that doesn't appear in intelligence briefings because nobody knows he exists yet. You have maybe 90 seconds to decide before his convoy disappears into the mountain roads. You move. After 11 days of absolute stillness, your body screams in protest. Muscles cramped from disuse, suddenly forced into action. You descend the ridge at an angle that keeps you below the sightline of the compound. Rocks slide under your boots. Too loud, way too loud. But the convoy's engines cover the sound. You reach the road 300 meters behind them, close enough to track their dust cloud, far enough to stay invisible. The terrain helps. Steep valleys, tight switchbacks, limited sight lines. You move through the high ground parallel to the road, using the folds in the landscape. This continues for 6 hours. Your water is running low. You've got maybe a liter left. Your legs are shaking from exertion after days of immobility. But you keep moving because this feels bigger than the original mission. The convoy stops at a compound you've never seen in any briefing materials. Larger than the others, proper walls, guard towers. This isn't a safe house. This is infrastructure. You find an observation position 800 meters out. It's not ideal. The angle is wrong. But it's what you have. Through your scope, you watch the gray-bearded man enter the main building. 14 people live or work in this compound. You count them over the next 4 hours as they move between structures. Then something unexpected. A generator kicks on. Unusual for this area where fuel is expensive and electricity is rationed. 10 minutes later, a satellite dish on the roof begins moving. Slowly, methodically, tracking something in orbit. Communications facility. That's what this is. Not a safe house, not a weapons depot, a command and control node. Your next transmission window is in 6 hours. You could report this, should report this, but you're miles from your designated position. If you transmit from here, the direction-finding equipment that's certainly monitoring this area will get a bearing. They'll know someone's watching. You make the call. You don't transmit. You stay dark. You observe for 3 more days from positions around the compound. You map everything. Guard rotations down to the minute. Vehicle movements. The faces of everyone who enters or exits. The pattern of the satellite dish. The times when the generator runs. You're burning through your supplies. You're down to your last energy bar. Your water is gone. You're drinking from a stream that's probably giving you parasites. Your body is eating itself, but the intelligence you're gathering is unprecedented. On day 14, you see something that changes the entire picture. A laptop carried from a vehicle into the main building. Expensive. New. The kind of equipment that doesn't belong in a mountain compound unless something significant is being planned. You've been out here 2 weeks. You're compromised physically, dehydrated, malnourished, running on fumes and willpower. But you've identified a target that's worth more than the original mission objective. You make your way back to your original position. It takes you 8 hours to cover ground you ran across in 90 minutes. Your body is failing. When you finally reach your hide site, you collapse. You wait for your transmission window. When it arrives, you send everything: coordinates, descriptions, patterns, the whole intelligence package. 30 seconds becomes 90. You're breaking every rule. But this is worth it. The response comes back in coded burst transmission. Message received. Extract in 72 hours. You've got 3 days to stay alive. 3 days until the helicopter comes. 3 days to remain undetected in a body that's already given everything it has. You settle into your position one final time and wait. The extraction bird comes in low and fast just before dawn. You hear it before you see it. The pilot doesn't land. He hovers 3 feet off the deck while you sprint across open ground. Legs that haven't run in 2 weeks somehow finding strength you didn't know remained. Hands pull you aboard. The door gunner never stops scanning the tree line. 30 seconds later, you're airborne. The valley disappears below. That compound, the one you watched for days, turns into a grid coordinate. Intelligence officers will spend months analyzing what you sent. Missions will be planned. Targets will be struck. Decisions will be made in rooms you'll never enter by people who'll never know your name. You sleep for 16 hours straight. When you wake up, there's a debrief. Clinical questions, tactical details. They want facts, not feelings. You give them everything: patterns, faces, the satellite dish, the laptop, the gray-bearded man who moves like he's important because he is. 2 weeks later, you hear through unofficial channels that the compound was hit. Precision strike, no collateral damage. The target was eliminated. Which target, they don't say. You don't ask. That's the job. You disappear into terrain that wants to kill you. You watch people who would kill you if they knew you existed. You report what you see to people who make it disappear. Then you do it again. No medals, no recognition. Just another grid coordinate on another map in another country that officially has no American military presence. The intelligence you gathered prevented something. Maybe an attack. Maybe a shipment. Maybe just bought time for someone else's operation to succeed. You'll never know the full picture. You were 1 pixel in a photograph too classified for you to see. But that's what being a singleton means. You're the eyes in places too dangerous for teams. The observer in positions too isolated for backup. The ghost who watches so others can act. And somewhere right now, another Recon Marine is lying in another hide site in another country, watching another compound, sending another report, living on nothing but discipline and the knowledge that what they're doing matters, even if nobody will ever know they did it.